Splyce coming out significantly ahead from that.
That's the double for PoE. Misfits may just run it down mid.
Splyce is just going to push through on this. There's no way of stopping them.
But you need all your teammates to try and defend against these Misfits.
I know for sure we're a better team than Splyce.
He flashing away after the Featherstorm. Misfits, they are tanky enough. Pull them together. Now kiss, says Maxlore.
I'll say Trashy is a one-trick Gragas, and if we ban Gragas and put him on Lee Sin, he's for sure to fail an insect or something and we can get a free win there.
Profit hole up in the top lane. That's ruined my point, Splyce. Good kill, Trashy. Well done.
I think some of his flaws is his champion pool, and he sometimes tend to be a Lee Sin one trick.
I channel D. I go.
This is fighting, guys. No flash, no flash, no flash, no flash. Nice, nice.
I think playing as Max should be really easy. We just bend the Lee Sin, and then if he plays Gragas, it's a free win for us because it's probably the worst Gragas I've ever seen in my life.
Misfits on the way in comes the flank guard. Can they get the fight afterwards? Maxlore, can you take it? That's it! Misfits, now they're gonna play clean up a Baron.
Well, to all my haters, we'll see in a few years' time when I win Worlds if you're going to still be hating.
Welcome to Berlin for our final matchup in cross-group play. Misfits Gaming and Splyce, they both took a dominant win in their series on Friday, and tonight only one of them will stand victorious as they go head-to-head in this crucial standoff. You see some of the guys getting on the stage, but honestly not worried what they're doing right now. That was some mad trash talk. Hello, everyone. I'm Daniel Drakos, breaking down the action with Andrew Vedius and Henning Eklund. What was your favorite trash talk moment? Personally, my favorite was Mikyx saying, this is literally the worst Gragas ever.
I love how they all think that Maxlore's the Lee Sin one trick, and then Maxlore's like, yeah, well, he's just a Gragas one trick. So they're gonna ban out Gragas and Lee Sin, and now they're like, oh no, we've got no junglers left to play. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. We'll see. Maybe new tanks. Maybe not. Maybe no one's a one trick anymore because everybody's gonna play Cho'Gath, right? So
probably.
Well, yesterday, Fnatic and Unicorns of Love squared off in one of the most thrilling series of 2017. The top team from Group A did lose Game 1, but managed to strike back and pull off a comeback win. Now, Fnatic has been 5-0 against the teams from Group B, and overall, I'd say a pretty impressive series.
Yeah, Fnatic, they looked pretty good. Game 1 was very exciting from both teams. UOL demonstrating that they still know how to team fight, which is always good, considering that was one of their biggest strengths. But Fnatic came back and they said, oh, you might know how to team fight, but I don't think you know enough tank champions. So into Game 2 and Game 3, they certainly made up.
I'm so sad that's what this come to. Is that what it felt like, Henning? Was it all about the tanks?
Apparently not from the Unicorns of Love. They decided to bring out a bit of a cheese in the mid lane there. Exile going for talent twice, maybe thinking that the Duskblade lethality meta is going to beat out the tanks, but as he and his team had to learn in that series, tanks were stronger, and Fnatic just looked so solid in all aspects of the game.
Tanks definitely top of the food chain right now. Well, Fnatic with that win have secured a spot in the summer playoffs and are looking to take first place in the upcoming weeks. And as we look at the standings, I have to say, not what we would have expected from the start of the season.
No, I mean, the fact is right now, Fnatic, they sit atop the group, very far away from teams like G2 and Misfits, but Group B is the one that I have my eyes on because of how close the standings are right now.
Yeah, for sure. It's got to be really motivating for the team that we're going to be seeing up on stage later today. Splyce, to see UL go 0-2 in the series this week, and H2K going 0-1, losing out against G2. So Splyce have the opportunity to catch up to the top two teams if they play well today.
And you see a similar story for Misfits. A lot of teams sitting at that 6-3 record. Well, overall, it has been an incredibly exciting week for us here at the EU LCS. So tweet at us. Let us know what you thought was the most exciting. Maybe it was that lethality isn't here like it is in solo queue. You let us know on Twitter at LO Esports using the hashtag EU LCS. Big plays. I want to see him. I vote Exile 1v1 outplay, but let me know what you think. Maybe you thought something was nicer. Maybe the Talon, just in general, was your favorite thing. Well, Misfits Gaming and Splyce, they're both fighting for this third place spot, and it's important that they find a victory today as they continue that fight. And both teams so far this week have had incredibly convincing performances, both played on Friday, and I feel like Misfits Gaming especially showed an incredibly dominant series against the Monkeys.
They certainly did. Misfits, they are a team that seem to have a very strong early game. I think it's difficult to argue with that based off of their recent performances. And you can see when they went up against Mysterious Monkeys, even though Misfits Monkeys did challenge them, the reality is they have strong individual laners that are always looking to make plays, great early jungle presence coming out from Maxlore, and this is where they build a lot of their leads. But they take a lot of risks later on into the game, and that's where things get a little bit chaotic, and that's where you do see fine teams coming back into these series.
Yeah, maybe a few more opportunities than they should have been afforded, and there were still some mistakes as we look at Splyce 2 in their series against NIP. It wasn't exactly perfect.
Yeah, in the end, a convincing 2-0 sweep, but as a team that's looking to contest for the top spots, you're not supposed to have that much trouble in the early game against NIP that we saw Splyce having. Also in the series against G2 earlier, they had a lot of trouble in the early game specifically, so that's where I'm looking for Splyce to put their attention to repair that. Going after the early game, though, into the mid-late game team fights, we know that they are an incredibly solid team. They rarely make individual mistakes, and they are like the big difference between these two teams to me is Splyce's unwillingness to take risks compared to, as Andy said, the willingness to take risks from Misfits, like going for this 22, 23-minute Barons against the Monkeys. That's going to be the big difference to me.
Yeah, you can just see from the stats on screen right now that Misfits are a team that will get a lot of leads during the early game. They're extremely active, but you can see that they have a rather high death count too, and that's because once they hit the 15-minute mark, they try to go for these risky tower dives. They try to go for these all-in plays, and Splyce are the kind of team that are very good at reacting to that, because they're not super proactive, but they're very smart about how they play the game, and when they see that window, they're exceptionally good at punishing it.
And when we look at that, then who is this going to benefit more? Because from what you've told me, even if Misfits are a team that can get early leads, if they're the team that makes mistakes, then it feels like Splyce may still have an opportunity to come back.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing, because what we want to see from Misfits is their ability to properly close out games, because from week to week, we've seen them get these early leads against top teams, but then they make these overcommitments, they make these crucial mistakes where things then fall apart. And what we don't want to see them doing is the same sort of mistakes from Splyce. Whereas Splyce, I don't think they need to be super proactive in the early game, but I do want to see them doing more later on, because right now I think they're a little too slow and they wait for their opponents to make that mistake.
Yeah, may be the case. Now, the new meta, another thing that we've been talking a lot about over the course of the week. Henning, I'm curious, who do you think this benefits more, all of these tanks coming into the picture?
I'd say that from our discussion right now and looking at the champions that have been popular and the play styles, just going for these early team fights, running it down mid, as some people like to call it, with these ARAM comps, so to speak, I'd have to say that benefits Misfits more. Get Maxlore and Alphari on two of these big tanks that can initiate the fights, get some Righteous Glorious or perhaps even a Sivir in there just to speed them up and be able to force the fights. I think what we've been seeing from Splyce are more of the top lane carries, trying to go for these sort of the more fancy 1-3-1 comps that can be hard to execute, and I think in the end that doesn't fit the meta as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm curious to see how the jungle meta will evolve, what Maxlore and Trashy are looking to bring out. We have seen a few interesting picks, but the one I'm thinking of is Skarner. I do think that if we're going to see it, it could be today.
All right, well, Misfits Gaming, ooh, still not used to that. And Splyce need to fight for a win here in the top spot. Let's send over the casters for our final series of cross-group play. Bleh.
Thank you very much to Drakos and the boys. Hello, everybody. I'm Trevor Quickshot here. We bring you this matchup with James Trace O'Leary.
This should be a great matchup. Misfits, Splyce, both are in the middle of their group, and both are on great form on this patch. This should be really exciting.
I'm looking forward to it. Maxlore and Trashy having a lot of fun off the Rift. Let's see what they do on the Rift. And let's remind you who else is playing with Maxlore. Of course, PowerOfEvil in the mid lane, as well as Hans Summer, who really had a fantastic Kalista game on Friday. I want to see what he plays today and how he shows up.
Oh, even tweeted that maybe the Draven comes back, but of course their opponents have been looking on great form themselves. And you mentioned in the middle lane, PowerOfEvil looking great, while Sencux, his opposite number, looking fantastic on the Syndra earlier in the week. Great performance on Splyce as a whole, really fast, active play, and that's what I want to see drafted from both teams.
All right, we're about to jump into picks and bans for the final time in cross-group play. It is, of course, Group A Misfits taking on Group B Splyce. And Stress, we were looking at the stakes of this game. Not only will the winner of Misfits or Splyce be in the 6 series wins, 3 series losses bucket, where HDK, UOL, and G2 will be.
It's a good bucket.
It's a great bucket to be in. But this also determines which group is better.
Yep.
Because the head-to-head's tied at 12 series apiece.
It has been a close cross-group play, but we know everything now on 7-14 is about the number of tanks. Those basically are the most important numbers coming out of pick ban phase. And with Caitlyn taking away one of the AD carries that can do well against tanks later on into the game, and just a lane-dominant one, we're obviously going along the same route that we've seen in most games here. Zac banned out from the jungle as well.
Yeah, no real surprises. Maxlore got his hands on that Zac. Earlier in the week, Elise taken off the table as well. No real surprises yet. Thresh, the only thing that's coming to mind, especially with Ignar on Misfits.
Yeah, that's a big pick for the support. We've also got to look at the Cho'Gath, the Sejuani, the Braum, the Maokai. These 4 champions have been paired together quite well over the last few days, specifically Maokai Cho'Gath, and then the Sejuani and Braum. Rek'Sai is a jungler that we have seen in days gone by out of Trashy, and we heard so much of the discussion about Gragas here. So Misfits actually maybe giving Splyce this very favorable jungle for them.
And we heard Splyce, Mickey in particular, saying ban Lee Sin, and that means Maxlore's gone. And of course, Maxlore saying ban Gragas, and that means Trashy's gone. We'll see if that happens in phase 2 of picks and bans, because as it stands, it's Cho'Gath to round out the bans, and a first pick Kalista.
And this was one of the champions that Hansama looked so great on the other day, and it's a champion that we were speaking to Wadid about, how dominant it can be in the laning phase, how good it is in the early skirmishes, can actually contend with a lot of the tankier champions before they get there. But look at across the rift, Sejuani potentially the pickup here after the Braum. They're the champions that their passives pair very well together, multiple chain stacks, and that is exactly what Splyce have gone for.
Or Maxlore going to be hovering the Kayn. I actually had a really good chat pre-game with Trashy about the Kayn, and I said, listen, are you playing? And he says, yes, he's playing in solo queue. So what can you tell me about Kayn? And Trashy said, well, I suck at this champion. So I'm like, not quite what I was looking for, Trashy, but I respect your honesty. And of course, both of these guys are going to go with a slightly more meta picks. It is that Maokai has the option to flex top, but I'm expecting it in Maxlore's hands. He ran it earlier in the week as well.
Yeah, most likely to be in that jungle role. We've seen the tricky starts you can also see from the jungle with the sapling getting the blue buff halfway across the map we saw earlier on. Misfits, I think, have been actually the most consistent team of playing this aggressive play style, looking for team fights, and their mid lane pick in phase 1 fits right into that. Orianna ball delivery now with the Maokai has worked historically so very well.
Yeah, PowerOfEvil, definitely one of his most played champions. You might be interested to learn it is undefeated in summer. 5 games played, 5 wins under his belt. And will PowerOfEvil continue that streak? Splyce are going to lock in the Syndra, so AD carry pool at risk of being targeted here, but Kobbe has quite a plethora of champions available to him. And we need to see what each team will prioritize in phase 2.
Both teams already drafting towards what they won with earlier in the week, and I think that makes for a very interesting matchup as we go through this one, talking about how both are on top form now. You look at a mid lane matchup where Sencux can maybe take the edge early on, but we know Orianna doesn't lose the lane that hard, so PowerOfEvil will have impact in this game. That is unless Trashy maybe gets some of that early game impact into the middle lane.
Well, let's see what Trashy can do. A little difficult on Sej early on, but got the tools of a Syndra to set him up. Phase 2, support's banned out, so Ignar's going to lose his primary engaged tools. Thresh is gone, Rakan is gone. Jax is the target from Misfits towards Wunder.
But Misfits can still look to play the Allister. It's fine into the Braum with the Kalista, very strong engage potential. Again, another tank, even better than a lot of tank supports because you just get the damage reduction, and that makes Allister all that more prominent earlier on in the game. So if Misfits can at least get an even top lane matchup, maybe we'll see them prioritize the Renekton or potentially the Jarvan matchup. We've seen both of those commonly picked. I think that would round out Misfits' composition very well.
Well, of the games that have been played by Alphari and Wunder this week, 3 of them were with Jarvan. Both games on the side of Misfits for Alphari. We'll see if he decides to go with it again. It is the Varus locked in for Kobbe. Definitely his most played champion. This split 6 games. This will be the 7th time. And he's got himself a 50% win rate on that.
And the aim here is to try and maybe get a little bit more of that laning presence here down in the bottom lane. Not going for an Ashe to start fights, looking to at least contend with some of the push that comes through. If Misfits do, in fact, go this Jarvan, it basically makes it difficult for Wunder to go the Renekton route. And with Jax banned away, now we have to look into other matchups, potentially, that scale into the game, have some of that side lane presence. We know Wunder likes to play the Kled.
Ooh, cleared into Jarvan would be interesting. Rumble's available as well. Most played. Let's see if he wants to go that route. He needs to decide. Few seconds locked in. All right, so now, Trundle.
This is an interesting one. I've heard that a couple of supports are trying to play the Trundle into Braum. Of course, Trundle great in a tank meta because your ultimate shreds away so much resistance. Pair that with the fact that you can actually disrupt quite a lot in the lane, have a decent amount of sustain and damage. I actually wonder how this bottom lane is going to go because you just throw Ignar in, he lands the pillar afterwards, and maybe we'll see Misfits with a very difficult to contend with bottom lane matchup here.
Ooh, very, very exciting indeed. So Trundle support for Ignar, bringing back an old classic. And of course, the Camille lock-in for Wunder. This makes me very happy. Not only is it a carry in the top lane, Wunder's played it once before and won, but when I rang the Misfits shame bell 2 or 3 weeks ago, when Misfits threw a 9,000 gold lead against H2K, it was because of Camille. It was Odawamne's Camille. And let's see whether or not Wunder can do the same level of performance and get that bell ringing in favor of Splyce.
Yeah, that quadra kill really shut the game out for Misfits, but Misfits with a very team fight focus. Kalista, Orianna, Maokai, Jarvan, all about grouping. On the other side, Splyce, they have some decent potential themselves, but it's a little bit more around pick-oriented when you look at the Syndra, the Sejuani, longer range, not necessarily having to fully commit into fights until the Camille goes in.
And this is exactly what the Analyst desk was talking about. Some more complexity to the Splyce comp, a split push champion in the Camille playing those side lanes. Let's see if Splyce can make it work, because if it were Battle of the Tanks, Misfits have already won that one, Stress.
Yeah, that is absolutely true, because Trundle, as we said, will be able to shred away so much of the resistances as well. So you neutralize any hope of tankiness that Splyce had already got. So I like this added complexity, being ready for the support pick, and Splyce, they're going to have a lot to contend with in that bottom lane. I'm looking forward to the bottom lane matchup.
All right, we'll keep our eyes on that and exactly how it plays out in a moment or two. It is the last game of cross-group play here in the European LCS. Misfits Gaming taking on Splyce.
Interesting support itemization to start this one off. You would maybe assume that Trundle, being a melee champion, somebody that can build tanky, would go the Relic Shield, but of course Coin got changed on 7.14. Once you've finished the quests, you'll get not only that extra movement speed for your allies moving towards you, but remember, Talisman of Ascension is so strong in this meta as well. You get everybody just speeding into the fight. So I wonder whether that is exactly what Ignar's looking for. Get into the fight after Kalista throws Trundle in first.
Yeah, bring the rest of the team with you if you can. A lot of engaged tools on the side of Misfits. And of course, Ignar, not the biggest of playmakers in a Trundle, but has the ability to impact a lot of plays. I'm looking at the summoner spells very quickly. Stress, you talked about the pick potential of a Splyce composition. So I like the cleanse on PowerOfEvil's side. A lot of hard CC that can come in and lock him down. PowerOfEvil, of course, he went for that Frost Queen's claim when he played Syndra earlier in the week. I want to see what sort of itemization shenanigans he has in Orianna.
All we know is Orianna can get that Nash's Tooth to come through. That was predominantly in the auto-attack tradings in the matchup he was playing. I believe it was into Lucian, trying to just out-auto him. But in this circumstance, I think he's actually going to be okay just going the standard route, get some of that later game damage. And the cleanse you mentioned, we've seen the impact of a Sejuani walking mid lane and just throwing the ultimate out and getting a kill from it. So wanting to protect from that. But as we see Maxlore go through his early jungle, this is something that we're going to go very accustomed to, especially with the Maokai, is you can walk between camps, pick up multiple camps quickly at the beginning of the game, and maybe even go mid lane, flash in, try and get a summoner to begin the game.
All right, we'll keep our eyes on Maxlore, having a little bit of trouble with that Raptor camp at the start. Finally going to clear this one out. Not the quickest of Maokai starts, but it was a defensive fan from the Misfits squad. No real hard leashes from either duo lane either, something that we've seen actually a lot this week, I feel. Let's see what this does to the early impact. Ignar, we're going to be moving forward. The race for level 2 looks like it's going to be somewhat in favor of Kobbe and Mikyx. There we go, a few minions ahead. And instantly Hans Summon Ignar back away.
And this is because there was at least a little leash given by Hans Sammer and Ignar on the bottom side. It's one of the things that makes blue side pretty strong right now with the Maokai when you compare it together. The ability for bot lane to go there. But as you said, I think the big Raptor actually leashed back into the camp and dropped some of the extra health. We saw a bit of taunting earlier from Maxlore on Twitter, preparing Wunder that he might be coming topside, but Maxlore's not quite there yet. Looked for the opportunity after getting Rift Scuttler, but Wunder's getting pushed under his tower. Alphari has the ability to push this in early on, but Wunder's playing for later in the game. You mentioned the split push threat. That's where he's going to take over in this game.
Let's see whether or not Splyce can stay in control long enough, because a Talisman of Ascension, plus Maokai, plus Kalista Ultimate, plus Jarvan, one of the best ways to shut down split pushes engage, and Misfits have got engaged for days. There's just so many tools available to them, and then you look at, you know, the lack of mobility on a Varus and a Syndra. means very juicy, very easy targets for Misfits to engage upon.
That's part of the reason why we see Sencux going Ghost here. If he can avoid an engage he can see coming in the middle lane, then at least that might help him out, because Syndra, when you have no flash, very difficult to get out alive in a lot of circumstances. But both teams have actually been very vocal for once in a matchup here in the EU LCS. You heard the intro to the beginning of the game, but throwing a bit of shade between each other.
It's really nice. I mean, there is a camaraderie off air and you know, off stage. But the moment these guys take to the Rift, then it is, you know, bitter enemies and playing for all the marbles, especially with so much on the line. Joining the 3 other teams currently at 6 series wins and 3 series losses. That's what's at stake here for Splyce and Misfits. So Stress, 5 minutes in, even Stevens here across the board. Which lane is going to crack first and why?
I want to see the Misfits approach into middle lane, try and punish this Syndra. That's where I would like to see the game crack first. I want to see Maxlore get into this lane, get the summoners down. But at the same time, Trashy is farming up very quickly, trying to hit that level 6 mark himself, and that's where he can turn that back around. If Trashy hovers mid lane, denies any impact from Maxlore, then Splyce can offset some of it.
Well, Trashy's been jumped on by Maxlore now. The Twisted Advance comes in, and as well a couple of saplings. And I want to look at Trashy's performances from earlier in the week. We'll get that in a moment or two as Hunt, Summer, and Kobbe, they're trading back and forth. Unbreakable comes down as that pillar of ice, although it's not really ice on this skin,
Pillar of
comes
junk.
up. There we go. The old school, traditional Trundle, as it were. But yeah, you know, Trashy's stats from earlier in the week, just really good performance. Admittedly, both Misfits and Splyce crushed their relative opponents, but those are just phenomenal, Stress.
Yeah, it's what we needed to see out of Trashy. We like to see this activity where on tank play, he can get fights started. You can see his kills and assists of 15. Pretty high for a jungler here, 2.5. Able to just be active on the map. And we threw a lot of criticism Trashy's way that he didn't seem to be doing much at the beginning of the split and throughout spring. And we said, okay, we need to see Trashy first of all expand his champion pool and then become more active. Luckily, the meta has expanded his champion pool significantly in the play style he likes, and that's why I think Splyce are on the up here in Group B.
It's actually something we have been talking about for a while.
Yeah.
Trashy on tanks, very comfortable. Sencux, all these weird and wonderful champions, like the mid lane is just so versatile. And then, of course, Wunder can play carries, can play tanks. You can see him on the Camille now. Let's see what he can do. Is 714's pushed a little bit more tanks to the front line.
Just a few.
Just a few.
Just a couple.
Slightly less of those like real hard carry top laners. But there's still options here for Wunder, and he needs to make his Camille work.
I like the emphasis the Misfits have put on the top side vision control here, trying to deny Trashy a couple of his camps, push him further back from that level 6 point, and it gave PowerOfEvil a good amount of room to work with in the laning phase here. You can see both mid laners are level 6. A little down in CS for PowerOfEvil, but that's to be expected against the Syndra when they're moving up in lane, pressuring you. And I actually just think the focus from Misfits is right here. Deny Trashy's ability into that middle lane as well.
And of course, the observers just zoomed out and highlighted the vision of Misfits, showing those deep wards that came from Maxlore successfully going on that small invade a few moments ago, trading evenly with Trashy, and then just getting that information, right? Allows Misfits just to keep farming up, get closer to their items, and well, just wait to engage ARAM style.
Those small trades in the jungle, you've got to remember the passive on Maokai. You get the health back on the cooldowns when you've spent a bunch of abilities around your opponent, and that's why Trashy couldn't take the trade. He didn't have items that enabled him to output enough damage to offset Maxlore's sustain. But look, Trashy has been able to farm up. He's hit that level 6 mark here. We're going to wait and see whether he throws it out to the middle lane. PowerOfEvil taking an opportune moment to recall, pick up the lost chapter for himself and get back into the laning phase. But now is the point where he has to worry about Sejuani coming to visit.
Yeah, luckily got the flash and the cleanse available to him. So no real, not a huge risk as long as he uses those effectively. But yeah, we got even CS, 62 to 69 in the top, 63, 69 middle, 74, 74, 80 carries. Trashy's done relatively well of getting a little bit ahead of his opposing number, but it only equates to 200 gold. And this might be the first little trading as we look at Alphari and Wunder going toe-to-toe. Similar story down in the bottom lane, but Mikyx really easily blocks it up. So neither team making a risky play. Both teams content to play this slow and steady. And nobody's really made any big plays, you know? Like, this is kind of expected, maybe from the Splyce side. They've got some scaling on their side. They want to play the map later. Misfits, do they need to make something happen quicker?
Misfits right now aren't necessarily rushing to make a play. They do want a little bit more time to get items on PowerOfEvil. Alphari as well needs a little extra time for itemization. But you can see that the scaling isn't terrible on Splyce either. They're getting towards that Blade of the Ruined King on Kobbe. Same for Sencux once he has his first item. That's a good time for Splyce to fight. One thing that I think is not hindering Splyce, but makes it more difficult to play their regular playstyle is this Braum from Mikyx can't easily roam out of the lane. Mikyx loves to go mid lane, loves to try and get exchanges started with Trashy and Sencux in the middle lane, and he can't quite do it as easily here. He has to be in the lane with Kobbe, because otherwise Hansama throws Ignar out for a 2v1, gets a kill in the bottom lane. So that's why we've got this slower pace from both teams. A lot more about jungle vision control and trying to just find any small opening rather than just going all guns blazing. Yeah,
jungle vision control, you can see kind of mirrored if you look at the minimap. Both teams with fairly shallow defensive wards and then fairly shallow offensive wards as well. As we get a toggle, Trashy's going to be meandering across a number of Misfits wards, so they'll spot him out. And of course, now we're clearing out some vision in the mid lane. We'll talk a little bit more about this PowerOfEvil versus Sencux matchup. Both guys looking better and better as time goes on. You can see some of their stats from week 7 doing well. Typical as we talk about it. A little bit of an engage from Trashy, but they get the flash. That's the important one. And to bring us back to mid lane, Sencux carrying more with a high damage percentage because his AD carry was not Hansama on Kalista.
No, his AD carry wasn't, but here's the Shockwave middle lane.
All right, trading. Good damage for PoE, but no follow-up.
No follow-up, but Sencux on this Syndra, that's what we were mentioning in the champion select for this game, was Sencux had dominant performances. A 20 KDA is insane on the series when it looks like Sencux is actually back on form, because remember, it's been a while that we've been saying, hey, Sencux hasn't been performing the best. He's kind of ranked towards the bottom of mid lane. As this split, he's been showing up a lot better than before.
You know, he's played 10 different champions across the 18 games. Not one of them more than 3 times until today. This is the 4th game played on Syndra. And in picks and bans, Stress, I mentioned PowerOfEvil undefeated in his Orianna at 5-0 this split. Sencux is 3-0 on his Syndra. So one of them...
Somebody's got to lose.
Exactly. Yesterday was Soaz and Vizichachi on their respective Shen and Jarvan picks, in which case Soaz came out on top. And now today, one of PowerOfEvil Sencux will remain undefeated. It's a 500 gold lead for Splyce. And we just keep seeing the trading, waiting for those item spikes. Triforce for Camille, Blade of the Ruined King being worked towards for Kobbe. Anonomicon for Sencux. And, well, the farm alarm is ringing true.
Yeah, it's not the loudest alarm right now. I'm interested with the mid lane meta and how it's going to progress. I'm wondering whether teams are going to start bringing back picks like Azir in order to deal with tank frontliners. His lane matchups aren't exactly the best, and the reason that I talk about this is one of these champions you can see on your screen, the Maokai, is very difficult to deal with for most mages. Can burn his flash by jumping on him quite quickly with Camille, though. And Maxlore now, that means his engage in the middle lane a little less potent than you normally would presume.
I have to question the analysts on our analyst desk, talking a lot about Splyce not being very proactive in the early game. Now, admittedly, this hasn't been the most active of early games, but Trashy gets Alphari's flash with the gank up top. Wunder on a roam gets Maxlore's flash, catching him in the river. And by flash economics, Splyce have a window of opportunity where they can make an investment pay off.
Flash economics.
Oh yes, I'm going to try and make this a thing.
Okay.
It's a thing that Deficio started talking about a few weeks back, and how the saving and spending of flashes can win or lose you profits in game. And that's what I want to see.
Okay, if Deficio's talking about it, that means everybody else is going to be talking about it soon.
Correct.
So
I'm getting on the bandwagon early. I'm joining. See what I mean? Flash economics, right? Trashy's got his ultimate up. Alphari spent that investment. And here comes Trashy, going to jump over the wall. The flail goes out. Baby cage put down, as does the Cataclysm, and first blood secured by Splyce.
Good first blood, as he said, utilizing the difference in flash economics in the top lane there. I'm not going to buy into that this early on. It's a nice concept, talking about that. You just got to re-gank the flash being down. It's as simple as that. You don't need economics classes, you don't need to study, you don't need a degree. Just re-gank the guy that doesn't have flash. And in this meta, it's likely to work 9 times out of 10 because with this amount of crowd control, look, Alphari desperately tries to outplay here, but as soon as the ultimatum is down, it stops his flag and drag. You see, it would have taken him out, but you can't get out of the ultimate. Crowd control lands, easy kill, and we needed to see Splyce get Wunder ahead. Now, not only does he pick up the kill, they also get tower first blood for him up in the top lane. That's going to allow this Camille to get faster and faster into this game.
Huge swing. Trashy's able to punish the flashless Alphari, and this allows Splyce to get 2,000 gold lead. All right, Hans Summer hops over the wall, stands on the blast cone, and whoa, actually out of range for that one. That was quite funny. Uses the pierce to then get over the wall again.
Not as, at least not as desperate as Betsy's last week.
Yes! Was that on the Corki as well?
Yeah,
Betsy's
it was.
Corki.
Oh, that was so sad. H2K had a great laugh at that in H2 What this week.
Many more people did as well.
That's true.
Although, yes, as you mentioned, Hans Summer not in desperate need to escape. He doesn't have the Blade of the Ruined King yet because, of course, went for the early Berserker's Greaves, whereas Kobbe on the other side has completed that Blade of the Ruined King and returns to lane.
A lot of that's to do with the fact that you can just get back to lane faster, make sure you can defer a lot of the push power of this Varus. Kalista's fine at pushing, but against the Varus, you can't really match up to that kind of pace. That's one of the reasons we've seen that, as Misfits will end up recalling. Now, they don't have a top lane tower. I don't know whether they're going to all-in commit to the top lane and try and take out Wunder, but look at how far Wunder is looking to push up here. There's a few wards here. I believe he spotted out Maxlore, and Trashy is coming around to the top lane as well. So there is the opportunity here for an engage, but I actually think Splyce is going to back away without taking anything.
Yeah, observers are doing such a great job of highlighting Misfits' vision throughout the course of that river move. We actually followed a Kalista Sentinel. That may be the first time I've consciously watched a Kalista Sentinel flying up the river for vision, but it did a great job of showing how much information Misfits are working with. It didn't prevent them giving up First Blood and First Blood Tower. However, do you want to praise the fact they've got this defensive vision, and now they need to use this comp. They've got first items picked up, Muranonomicon, Blade of the Ruined King now, for PoE and Hans Summer, and they got engaged for days.
Normally we only look at Kalista Sentinels when they're stuck in a Baron pit.
That's it,
so
that's it.
Don't really look too much more out of that. You talk about the engage, of course we got to look at what primary engage Misfits have. You can see potentially Hans Summer with the Kalista ultimate, also the Jarvan ultimate are good tools, and then from that, Maxlore. If you can get that ultimate through the fight, all of those, is he Maokai? Yeah, all of those cats with the Nature's Grasp meowing through the fight will lock everybody down. Very difficult to deal with once that animation has started. The slow onslaught of roots that will ground an entire team fight.
We're not helped out by the RNG gods today. Cloud Drake into Cloud Drake. So for two teams that kind of want to fight, or at least on the Misfits side, you want to look for those objectives to contest and, you know, do battle over. Generally speaking, people are not going to lay their lives on the line for a Cloud. Misfits, though, did get the first one uncontested.
First one, and I guess Splyce now will change up the focus. Look, Camille is recalling out. The problem for Wunder here is he can't push past pretty much the midpoint in his lane. And until he can actually get further out on the map, he's not actually going to have any real impact in this split push. He'll be able to keep his farm up, and maybe if they commit Trashy over to the side lane, say if Alphari looks to be a defender up in the top lane, that is an area they could exploit, there being no tower for Misfits, but it is a dangerous game that we're going to have to see Wunder and the rest of Splyce play out very carefully.
Yeah, let's step back and once again just talk about these two teams, both at 5 series wins and 3 losses. Let's see whether or not Splyce can get a good advantage here. Both teams grouping up at the mid lane. Trashy got that Glacial Prison available to him. A lot of follow-up with Kobbe and Mikyx and Sencux. The AoE crowd control. Very, very powerful. But ARAM comp, new target assigned. Bottom lane, you can see PowerOfEvil thinking about it, moving with the rest of Misfits, but playing it so safe, Stress. Why are they going so slow?
One of the reasons is the fact that their movement speed items haven't been completed yet.
Yeah.
So we got the Glacial Shroud looking for the Righteous Glory on Maxlore. Once he's got that, he'll feel a lot more confident just running at people. Same Talisman of Ascension hasn't been completed. I believe the quest has been completed by Ignar for a little while now. Has that reward to allow them to run a lot faster towards him. Great.
Thank you, Curbs. Curbs, I think you're onto something as well. Let's definitely keep track of that as Misfits gonna build up their movement economics. No, that's going too far.
Are you and Martin going into like dodgy online universities? Ooh, hang
We'll
on.
find out. Flash is blown. Sencux able to escape there. That was a little interesting. They walked onto PowerOfEvil's Shockwave and then decided to back away from the tower.
Yeah, Shockwave just used to deny any kind of a push, but Kobbe, meanwhile, was pushing in the bottom lane. So that's at least a nice little opening from Splyce, recognizing that they can kind of soft commit into the middle lane, not take a fight, but buy enough time for Kobbe to be pushing bottom lane. And Splyce are slowly edging their lead further and further. From what felt like a very close game, it has now opened up to about a 3,000 gold lead, nearly 4,000 in fact, in favor of Splyce. A lot of it through the farm in the top lane and in the jungle. Mid lane with a CS lead as well, but the tower advantage is the majority of this gold, and that benefits Splyce. You've got a Camille that wants to play out on a wider map. You want to have more opportunity as the rest of the team will sit towards the middle lane and just play defensive.
Yeah, and of course the Rift Herald was picked up at the cost of the tower. Maxlore's got that on his trinket slot. I want to see how effectively Misfits can set this up. There we go, going to channel down the mid lane. There's no one to defend, so this is fantastic. The Rift Herald may not even be needed for this kill, but I think they'll just let the bop get the final shot. Yes, there we go. And Misfits back away safely. So the first tower of the game secured here by Misfits. And that will at least make Sencux's life a little more difficult. He can't just sit there and wave clear the whole time. Although Splyce still have the top lane and bottom lane outer turrets. So a lot of control still in favor of Splyce, which is exactly what their team comp wanted to do.
It is, and Sencux is going to have a lot of assistance in the middle lane as well. Trashy will be around, Mikyx will be around. We've seen Kobbe drift out to the top lane and drift back, but look, Splyce looking to head towards the bottom lane, trying to punish on Alphari, but again, you can see Misfits have enough members in their jungle that Splyce can't fully commit into a fight here without Alphari making a mistake, and that's something that you've got to kind of praise both Wunder and Alphari for, is neither of them have overextended all that much in this game.
No. Well, neither team has done a whole lot either. I just got an update from the stats team, Stress. Trashy has dealt 530 damage this game.
Okay.
Let's double check that that is correct with Trashy. And he's got an assist to his name. It may have all been just in that one tower dive.
Yeah, it was pretty much. There was a small trade early on with him and Maxlore, but didn't do a lot of damage in response. So I want to look at why this game is slow. We talked a little about the itemization, first of all, and why there's no real primary engage out of Misfits to start before those items being complete. For Splyce, on the other hand, they're waiting for Wunder to just, utilize this lead he's got in farm. And again, he's not going to make any kind of plays onto a tower without seeing Misfits committing elsewhere on the map. And that just means we're going slower and slower as this game gets further.
I'm really happy for Splyce that their game plan is working, that they did exactly what they needed to do. I'm just very sad that the playstyle of the comp is going to be more of this.
Yeah.
Because technically Splyce don't want those huge team fights. They don't really want the big 5v5s. They want to be able to control maybe a 1-4 and let Wunder push. He's got that TMI completed, Triforce as well. Let's take a quick look in the river. Ignar's been caught out, subjugating. Fate's Call is thrown down. Glacial Prison on the back end. Mikyx goes down. Misfits are now on the board. Runaways. Exactly what Splyce do not want. The PowerOfEvil Shockwave catches 3. It's a double kill for PoE. Trashy's running for his life. Tries to escape. Arctic Assault buys some time. And Misfits right back in it. That's a triple for Power.
The follow-up crowd control is so good out of Misfits. This Maokai, the Jarvan, and now they move to the Baron. And from what was a controlled and slow game, we only needed one fight to break it open as Misfits counter-engage, get 3 kills. Now they're going to get the Baron. They got the Kalista. Easy take for Hans Sammer and the rest of the Misfits.
I did not even see how that started. Splyce get caught out The one area their comp should not be caught out.
So they try to catch on to Ignar as Mikyx and Wunder put down a lot of damage. But look, Sencux and Kobbe are here as well. They realize this is a 5v5 and they have to back away, but it's too late. All of the roots roll through the fight into the Jarvan Cataclysm.
Good.
And you cannot escape from here. Splyce just don't have the mobility to run away. Misfits are too strong when it comes to the ability to chase down. 3 kills. And that right now is Misfits taking full control with this Baron buff.
Yep, I agree with Trashy indeed. Throws the head back. PowerOfEvil, 4,300 damage. Gets the triple kill, gets the Baron, and all of a sudden, good luck playing the side lane against Baron-empowered Misfits members. And PowerOfEvil's fully online. Insta-cleanse from PoE. He's able to escape.
This is a ridiculous ability.
It's fantastic. Love the animation as Trashy gets rooted up. He's forced to back away.
It's not even just about those Baron buff minions now as well for Wunder that will deter him in the side lane. It's this righteous glory. It's the ability for Misfits to arrive almost out of nowhere and just appear in a lane, cut him down, and then move to the tower that sits behind him. That's the difficulty, is Wunder doesn't really have any assistance around him. But look, Misfits don't need to commit to that for now because it's all around the bottom side. They know they still have the numbers advantage. They've put vision control all the way through the bottom side up towards the base, and they're just going to play off these 2 lanes because Wunder at some point will have to recall.
He's got the teleport available to him. Splyce going to try play this on a few lanes, but Misfits, such deep vision into this right-hand quadrant of the jungle. Peel away from bottom lane, group up mid. There's a little bit of defense here from Trashy as well as Sencux, and the sapling toss goes out. Maxlore tags a couple of shots from under the tower. He's got that righteous glory completed. Tower number 3 is broken during the course of Baron buff. And Splyce now all of a sudden, they're the ones playing from behind. They're in the gold deficit, and they may lose another tower here.
And that's where these more complex compositions now have their downfall, is you need to get these very tricky engages to work for. You need Sencux to land a freak stun onto a Hans Sama. If you can just catch him out of nowhere, then you end up taking out some of the damage threats. But that's relying on mispositioning out of Hans Sama and PowerOfEvil. And there is a window. With PowerOfEvil, no flash, no cleanse, potentially you can capitalize on that. But Misfits are going to recall. They got themselves another Drake. They can reset this game and look for another push. 40 seconds of Baron buff shouldn't mean there's any more towers going down, but they'll assume control of the map once again.
Are you kidding me? The next one is Cloud again. So Misfits already got the wanna go fast combo, 2 times Cloud Drake, which actually I think is very useful for this team.
Absolutely.
Group together, pick the lane, and it just allows you to set up that initiation a little faster. Ignar almost catches Wunder. But yeah, another 3rd one, add that to the list. What's, I think, 75 move speed out of combat? Exceptionally powerful at rotating between lanes.
Ridiculously powerful. You pop the Righteous Glory as soon as you're even in range for it to activate running towards people. Talisman of Ascension has been completed as well. And we talked about how this is going to rely on catching Hans Sama or PowerOfEvil. Well, PowerOfEvil, a quarter of his cleanse cooldown to go, and a QSS already completed on Hans Sama makes him not really a reliable target to catch either. So Misfits are neutralizing a lot of this pick potential out of Splyce, and Splyce are kind of floundering with how to play this composition out.
Oh, can't believe it. One mistake, one lapse in judgment, and one team fight throws away 20 minutes of just great early game from Splyce.
And I think a lot of people look at this game and say, okay, it's 2,500 gold deficit at 27 minutes. That's not game ending. And it isn't. It isn't game ending. It's not the case that Misfits have won this game at all. But when you look at how the compositions play out, Misfits have such an easier to execute composition against what Splyce are bringing. And in this meta, ease of execution plus tanks is devastating in team fights. And that's why it's going to be difficult for Splyce to break Misfits.
Now let's see what they can do, because Misfits still have to get over the hurdle of the base. Inhibitor turrets all standing. 1 outer turret in that top lane remains. Misfits 5 towers to 2. They've got, as you mentioned, that gold lead and 2 item spikes, now 3 with Mercurial Scimitar on Hans Sama. is just setting up very well.
And it looks like we got Christmas in July because there's basically a Christmas tree worth of lights of vision in the top side of the Splyce jungle. Misfits having full control. They can see just about everything happening up there. They know Kobbe's there. They can see Braum in the middle lane. They know nobody is around red buff. So they can set up vision control for the next 2 minutes here when this Baron spawns. And the two Cloud Drakes will help them. They'll be able to move around, get vision control, maybe even go for 2 versus 1 in the top side. But Mikyx is here. This could be the mistake the Misfits can't afford to make.
Alphari's in the base, starts to teleport down, but look at the damage already. Sencux is out, Unleashed Power comes down, but it simply will not be enough. Alphari's got the slam dunk available to him, doesn't even need it yet. Oh, PowerOfEvil's on a rampage. That's his 4th kill of the game. Splyce lose 2, and they're caught napping.
Yeah, it was Kobbe that got caught topside, then Sencux gets caught in the fight. Wunder dies, now they want to get Kobbe again.
Man, the flash cataclysm comes down. Kobbe's taken out by PowerOfEvil, 5th kill of the game. Trashy's running for his life, and with 4 Splyce members down, the base is broken open. And Misfits, do they fancy a shot at the Nexus?
It looks like Misfits just want to keep pushing here. Ignar tanks it up to begin with. They've already got the inhibitor, and Misfits looking to close this out. Sencux still hasn't even respawned yet.
29 minutes in, Misfits actually won the game in 7 minutes. All it took was punishing 1 team fight, and Misfits crushed Splyce in game 1.
Starting with a whimper and ending with a bang has maybe never been so apt here in the EU LCS, because that was a slow game for a long portion. Both teams trying to feel each other out early, not make the mistakes, and it was just that one overcommit from Splyce, and Misfits capitalized on the team fight.
Our broadcast narrative coming into today was focused around Splyce not having a great early game and how Splyce can punish mistakes in the mid to late game. The exact opposite occurred, in my opinion, where Splyce had a great laning phase, they got first blood, they had multiple ganks, and then they make a mistake that Misfits punish and lose the game within 7.5 minutes.
It's a lot to do with the draft here. You've got Orianna for teamfight presence. You've got Jarvan and Maokai with the Cataclysm. Really turns around teamfights exceptionally well. And like Sencux and the rest of Splyce, they have a decent comp for that pick composition, longer range, try and get the Sejuani going. But it's too easy to press R on Maokai and just win a team fight.
Yes, and then everything else. I mean, you get, what was it, 3 for 0, 4 for 0.
Yeah.
Baron available. You've got 27 million HP on your tanks.
And you just win the game.
Yes, I mean, look, all kudos to Misfits, and I actually think a lot of credit to Splyce for the early game. It was slow and steady, but it's exactly what their comp needed. Unfortunately, the team fight was not. So Misfits Gaming are on their way to take the series after a game 1 win. Drakos and the boys are ready to break it down.
Drakos and the boys here. Thank you, Quickshot. First off, we were hilariously wrong about everything regarding both of these teams.
Well, the teams adapted. They showed
developed.
2 days. They've swapped identities, folks. It's happened. It's changed completely. All right, so the first thing we want to look at here is the draft, and I think this plays a big factor in a lot of the execution points that we brought up, and in terms of what also tells us a lot about what we're seeing in the meta. So let's start with you, Vedius. Like, what do you think was the defining factor here when we look at this draft phase for Misfits building a comp that they were successful with?
So I think for Misfits, what they decided to do was they put a high value on the Kalista, and I'm like, okay, that makes sense. You have strong winning lane bottom side. A lot of the AD carries say she's really strong, especially in the 2 versus 2, especially if you go for the early Zerkers into the Vamp Scepter, you're fine, right? But then normally you want to pair that up with a powerful engaged sort of bottom lane, maybe like a Braum or Thresh, Alistar, all really good options. Instead, they put it with the Trundle. And I was sitting here on the desk and I was talking to you guys and I was like,
we were fighting. We were fighting about the Trundle, yes.
Don't know what I think about it. You concede the lane that you wanted to try and win. We heard Yamato saying on the desk yesterday how Kalista's kind of the champion that you want to use level 6 mark with. You want an early game advantage. If she's going even in the mid game, you're like, not so good. But they picked the Trundle because of the mid-game value that he brings in these team fights. And we could see it later on when they did get involved in those fights because he did have a lot of effect. And I was impressed with his use of pillars. And I'm not surprised that we saw little gank pressure from Maxlore, because when you look at the lanes that he has to gank on, bottom lane, not really a huge number of options because of the Braum disengage. Mid lane, Orianna, you don't really want to gank heavily for an Orianna. If she goes even in that laning phase, she's a happy chap. And the only options were top, where we saw a lot of pressure from the side of Splyce, so it was difficult for him to really gank.
So we can say Misfits safely not playing the aggressive early game that we expected, but Henning, is this okay when you look at Misfits composition? Do they need to make plays in the early game with this style of comp that they put together?
I definitely think that it could have went for more proactive plays early on, but still like going for these sort of team fight, forcing the engages when you've got like 1.5 to 2 items, that's where this comp really spikes for me. Like Kalista 2 items, Maokai with the Righteous Glory, that's when you really want to fight, and that's what we saw them do later on as well in the engages. Also gotta say for the side of Splyce though that I like what they did in the early game. They were able to get ahead in the top side through Trashy.
And so, backtracking to this fight where we did see Splyce kind of like haphazardly go for an engagement, I think the big thing there was Splyce weren't fully sure what they wanted to do with this fight, because we saw a Sejuani ulti going off towards Hansama where there was no follow-up. We saw Mikyx using his ulti where there was, again, no real follow-up. And Splyce, they were just grouping in this narrow choke point. PowerOfEvil was perfectly safe, Hansama was perfectly safe, and to me, it just felt like that Splyce weren't really clear about what they wanted to exactly do. And this is why we say that they reverse, because that's usually the issue that you see from Misfits, where they go for these over-aggressive dives, they try to force these random fights, and it was Misfits that was successfully punishing Splyce. So I think that it was good for Misfits to find that fight, especially at that point in the game, because that's where the composition really needed to make stuff happen.
The other thing I want to bring up is that we talked a lot about drafting currently, and Splyce bringing out the 1-3-1. It looks like, again, to a certain degree with the Camille. Obviously, Camille may be a little bit more team fight impact, but still can be that split pushing threat. Was this a factor kind of coming into the mid game? Is this part of the reason why it feels so easy for Misfits to take some of these fights, is because they know that when it comes to 5v5, they have a lot of advantages in their kits?
Yeah, I think it's mostly due to the scaling of the champions. I think that the champions on Misfits roster did a lot better at that time of the spikes where the team fights were going down. Also got to say with the Camille that I like the early attention from Splyce there, getting her ahead. So setting up towards later stages, going for a 1-4 strategy with a Camille off in the sideline would have been a really good choice for them. It's just that like the decisive team fighting from Misfits did not allow them to get there. Also got to praise the last 2 picks for Misfits here. Jarvan and Trundle, so good at punishing the immobile carries that we saw from the side of Splyce. Syndra and Varus, what are you going to do when there's a pillar or a cataclysm behind you? Not a lot.
And surprisingly, it just feels like there just wasn't enough peel here. Braum, normally a pick that can deal with a lot of these things, but unfortunately, Braum just gets trapped into terrain too, and he decides to defend. And yes, hello, Mr. Fly.
Companion.
Yeah.
I'm touching you that intimately.
All right, man, don't get jealous. Calm down. It's going to be all right. So when we look at this, I mean, he's aggressive. All right, well, so when we look at this for the next game, when we try to prepare for next game, when we look at the drafts and what we want to see change, is this Splyce taking more mobile options, something to deal with the Jarvan and the Trundle, or is this something that when they're drafting these compositions, they need to be aware that these terrain-making effects can shut them down in the mid to late game fights?
I don't even think like their composition was a real problem. I think it's simply a matter of execution. I think that they picked the wrong times to fight, and I think they could have just been a little clearer in what their goals were.
All right, just to round it out then, is it better for them to try a similar comp and try to execute better, or to draft an easier comp?
Tanks, dude. They need more
okay,
tanks.
so that's what it's come down to, right? Is that we just want to see them draft an easier to execute comp because we know it is more reliable. Is that correct?
I want to see them draft Quintop, Talon mid, lethality meta. Please.
Okay, well, on that note, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, the players step on stage for Game 2. Stick around. We'll find out if it's finally time for lethality meta.
Like, yeah, the Fisher is always talking about this fan, tank meta, 5-man mid, you know. He just wants to be a part of it.
What's Mikyx saying? This is literally the worst Gragas ever.
And here comes Trashy, gonna jump over the wall. The flail goes out. Baby cage put down, as does the cataclysm, and first blood secured by Splyce.
Okay, nice. I'm gonna boost.
Runaways. Exactly what Splyce do not want. The PowerOfEvil shockwave catches 3.
I got
Nice some time, and Misfits right back in it. That's a triple for Power.
I got shockwave runner. Nice.
I should John, you're fine, okay? Go ahead, I should.
Come on.
Nice!
All it took was punishing one team fight, and Misfits crushed Splyce in game 1.